Situationships, no labels, no commitment. However, loads of drama. Welcome to another episode of the Son of a Podcast. This is the second episode of a 5-part relationship mini series that we're going to do. I am your host, Gabriel Chavarria Sode, and as usual, I am joined by my dad.
I am your father.
There we go. That's my dad, Albert. And as I said, we're talking about situationships, the very elusive and very confusing parts of a relationship that my dad doesn't know much about, that I just barely know enough about, to be honest with you. But it's going to be a very good episode. And let's get straight into it. So you don't really know what a situationship is, do you?
To me, it sounds like a typo, like something that you meant to say, but you just said it wrong, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like you're trying to say relationship, but you got a bit confused halfway through, didn't you?
Exactly. I've heard a little bit about them, I have to admit.
Okay.
I heard about them,
well, I was going to say, from what do you think they are? What is your understanding of them?
Okay, my understanding of them is what I heard in a podcast, I think 2 years ago, that we had with the students at school.
Yeah.
Were you in that?
Yeah, I was in the audience. I wasn't in the actual audience. I was in the audience. Yeah.
Okay. My understanding is like a relationship that isn't a relationship, really. It doesn't really make much sense to me even right now. So you have to explain it a little bit more.
Yeah. So you were basically on the right tracks. You kind of said it, but it's essentially the parts of a relationship before the commitment or before the labels have been put on the relationship. So you and the other person, you and your soon-to-be partner, I guess, you guys are kind of doing relationship things. So you're going on dates, you're doing physical stuff, I guess, but you just haven't called it a relationship yet.
Well, you say no labels, but situationship on its own is a label. Might I just say?
Exactly. That's the paradox, isn't it? Of no labels and commitment.
So it's basically so it's the real issue here is the lack of commitment.
Yeah, that's the lack of commitment is the biggest issue and the biggest I guess point of friction that causes all of the drama in this. And
I would say
you don't so. Because you said it's a label, even though you don't want labels in a situationship, but you don't talk about the situationship with the other person, if that makes sense. So it's more of a thing that you say, I'm in a situationship with X, Y, and Z to your friend. You know what I mean?
You're right. So right. Okay. So the couple don't even talk about their situation or their.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, so right. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's no commitment and no label thing in the relationship, because you don't say that you're in a situationship to the other person. It's kind of just a unspoken thing, an unspoken rule, I guess. Even that, I feel like it's weird to say the rules in this situation.
So 2 questions spring to mind straight away. First of all,
go.
And I hope you can answer both of them. If you don't even talk about it, how do you even know you're in one, or how you end up in one? And then second is, does it ever become a relationship, or is it always just a situationship?
Well, like I said, it's kind of I think it's something based on feeling. You know what I mean? It's kind of that point before the relationship when you're talking with someone. You know there's a connection, you guys like each other. You're kind of doing things that a normal couple would do, but you just haven't called yourself a couple and you haven't come out as a couple.
Right.
So it's kind of a feeling thing. There's not a specific point in a relationship. It kind of varies and fluctuates from each relationship and each couple or pair, I guess. And it's more, like I said, it's more of a thing that you tell your friends about instead of the actual person, So it's not something that you can, there's a very good chance that in the same relationship, each person thinks the situationship started at a different point,
Oh, boy. So, you know what? I mean, that sounds like a recipe for disaster, man, I just say. They say in relationships, although it's not a relationship, but in human relationships, no matter what stage they're at, it is pretty much common knowledge that communication is key. If there's no communication, it ain't gonna work. So I'm seeing red flags everywhere in my mind. But anyway, it's a And is this Gen Z or Gen Z thing exclusively, or is it millennials, or when did this start?
That's something I was going to ask you guys, because I feel like this term situationship kind of came up or has become kind of recent with definitely Gen Z and maybe millennials. I don't really know. That's kind of before my time. But I, you guys must have had something similar to this.
Yeah, with communication. So, but first,
Communication.
I'm sorry, you haven't answered.
Yeah, the second part. Yeah.
Which is you're in a situationship.
Yeah.
What's the next stage after a situationship? Is there a relationship, or does it break up without communication? Is there a communication at some point where you say this is now over, or what? Because that really blows my mind.
Well, I guess the next step is in theory is the relationship. So it would go situationship and then relationship, and that would kind of go with just asking the other person if they want to be in a relationship. So it's kind of like a flow diagram, where you have the situationship. You ask the question. If yes, then you're in a relationship. If no, then then I don't know what happens there. Then there's many different options after that. But generally, I guess the biggest part is then you kind of just break things off there, and it's like, oh, there are things itch, and that's where the heartbreak happens. And
right. So there's heartbreak. There are feelings involved, right? You're allowed to have feelings, right?
yeah, I mean, that's the thing is most of the time there are feelings, and people end up getting heartbroken, and it's just generally a disaster.
I don't know, man. You asked me a question, but questions keep on coming up to my mind. Okay, so you're in a situationship. You're not allowed to talk about it, but you do talk. I mean, you do talk, right, with a person. You don't just like look at each other and hold hands and walk around the park and then go home without saying anything. You do talk, right?
Yeah, obviously, it's a normal. It's a normal. Okay, okay. Let me kind of clear things up.
Yeah, please do.
You're basically doing everything that you do in a relationship most of the time.
Yeah.
Or you're doing everything you do in a relationship. So you're talking, you're going on dates, you're having sex, you're whatever, you're kissing, you're holding hands, whatever. But you're just not calling it a relationship because some people are scared of commitments and labels. So I guess a way to protect themselves from that is to not call it anything. But then normally this is like this blows up in their own face type of thing.
Okay, yeah, I imagine. So, okay, that I get. But you're not even the unspoken rule is that once you start getting into a situationship, or once you I'm sorry, it's just that I'm a little bit confused here. So you start talking to somebody, a boy or a girl, or another boy, another girl, whatever. You feel attraction, and attraction seems to be mutual, and eventually you kind of get together. It'd be like maybe you end up holding hands at one point, or if it's online, I don't know how that happened. Anyway, I'll ask you about that later. You end up getting together somehow. But the unspoken rule amongst your generation is that at no point you actually mention the word getting together or anything like that, right? At that moment, you are in a situationship until one of the two asks whether you should turn it into a relationship. Is that pretty much in your nutshell?
Yeah, basically. Like I said, the situationship stage, it's not like there's an X amount of time they have to be in there, So it does vary from time to time.
Naturally progresses into a relationship.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so going back now, you're starting to feel attraction for somebody. From hearing you talk, I'm assuming this isn't an online thing. It's not like through chats or anything like that. This is either or.
No. I'm not saying that technology isn't used. Obviously, it is used to like message and stuff like that. But most of the time, this is an in-person thing. Because I mean, like that's kind of like how relationships work, kind of thing. Obviously, there are the people that do it online. I personally have never experienced that, and I don't know what that's like. So I can't vouch for that, but that is a part of it because you're texting throughout the day, throughout the week, and then you're.
So it's a basically in that sense, there's no difference. It's a normal a young person's relationship through your phone or
Exactly.
through the apps or through FaceTime or and personally as well. Okay, fair enough. Okay, and how do you break up in a situationship if you? Because I'm assuming I know that if the situationship turns into a relationship, it's pretty easy. You one of the two or mutually, you one day say, "Hey, I think we should make it serious," and then you both agree, and then it goes on. But how do you break up with somebody that you're not actually in a relationship with? Is it just ghosting? Do you stop communication altogether, or do you actually talk and say the elephant's out of let's address the elephant in the room. We had something, but I don't feel it anymore. Off you go.
Well, that's the advantage that people see with situationships is that they do feel that they can just ghost and they can from one day to the next cut things off without saying anything and just leave. I don't see that as an advantage, to be honest. But the way I see it, the best way to do it is by saying, "Listen, I don't see things progressing anymore. I think we should stop seeing each other, I guess. Stop
We're not
doing
seeing
together."
each other.
But you know what I mean? Like, exactly.
I do. I do. What really surprises me, what really gets no fun is that what you're describing is a normal
It's a relationship. Yeah, I know.
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, I really am feeling old. Up to this point, in the last 27 episodes of Sonova that we've had, I felt that this amazing bond with your generation. Right now, I feel as far away as could be. So
You guys must have had something similar when you were younger, no?
well, yeah, it was called a relationship.
No, but even like before this, even before the relationship started, you guys must have had something similar.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this is the way it was when I was a young man. Okay, I'm talking between the late teens, 17, 18, all the way till I got married, right? Till I started going out with mommy, right? When I was 35. You met somebody, whichever way it was. They caught your eye, you caught their eye, and eventually something happened. Up to there, exactly the same as you guys. I'm assuming. Right?
Yeah.
When that happened, you immediately talked about it. Maybe not, maybe the first 2, 3 days, maybe you didn't. If you were in high school, maybe it was a weekend and then you went home and you thought about it. And then maybe on Monday morning, you talked to your friends, they talked to their friends. And maybe by Wednesday, maybe that week you didn't do anything until the next weekend, right? And then it went from weekend to weekend. It was a little weekend jump until maybe the fourth weekend, or maybe the second weekend, you just immediately said, "Hey, I like you," right? When you get older, when you're in your 20s and you're not in school anymore, you might have the same thing, but you might be, depending on the people, the natural progression was that you would eventually talk about it, and I'm not talking about talk about it months after. I'm talking about maybe between hours and a few days, right? Those conversations were very different depending on the situation. It could be like, "Hey, I really like you." And the answer would be like, "Well, I really like you too, but let's keep it casual for now." That was a normal thing, right?
Mhm.
Keep it casual, get to know each other. Or it was, "Hey, I really, really like you." This was normally my case. I'd be "Oh man, I really, really, really like you." And the answer was like, "It was just a one-off. Leave me alone." No, never again. Right.
Yeah.
And that was my heart down the drain. But there was always a conversation, right? And then from that conversation, it developed into a more serious thing. If it was a casual thing, you spend a period of time seeing if it was worth having a more serious relationship, and if you didn't, then you broke up. For example, it was very, very easy.
That's quite similar to this. I mean, because this situationship now is kind of like the casual part that you guys had.
Yeah, but we said and we agreed it was casual. It was
Yeah.
very. I mean, if I felt attraction to somebody and there was a party and we did something, we got intimate, whatever, and then we didn't say anything at all for the next 3 days. It was mutually assumed that nothing had ever happened and it was over.
Well, no, but okay. Yeah, okay. So here's the thing. There is okay. I feel like I gave off the wrong impression of that. There's zero communication. There is communication to this whole thing. Obviously, there is like the normal progressions of things where, okay, let's say you are friends first. You guys are friends for a bit. Then you say, "Hey, do you want to go on a date?" Then you go on a date or whatever. And that period when you've gone on a few dates and maybe you've kissed or whatever, you've held hands, and before you've actually said, let's take things seriously, let's be boyfriend and girlfriend, that period there between the, let's say, the first dates and the boyfriend and girlfriend, that part is what the situationship is called, right?
Right. Yeah. So, but I mean, you are allowed to say, hey, I really enjoyed last night's date. Can we repeat it? That's allowed, right? Or is that?
Yeah. Of course.
That's not commitment, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's allowed.
Okay, right. So really, what I'm saying is that it's exactly the same.
Yeah, but now we just have a label for it. Kind of.
No, really, what you're saying is that it's exactly the same as what we had, except it's a generational agreement that from the get-go, it's always going to be casual until somebody says otherwise. And there's not even a reason to talk about what we should do afterwards. You just get together, you go on a date, you both like it. One says, hey, I like the date, should we repeat it? The other says, yeah, I like it too, let's repeat it. You go on another date, and then that's it. You just start your relationship without even calling it that, basically.
I want to say yes.
So it's exactly the same as we did then.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching. No, I'm joking. No, but okay. Yeah, but here's the thing with situationships, right? Is a lot. Okay, I don't want to say a lot of the times because obviously I don't know. I don't have the statistics of how many times the situationship progresses into a relationship and how much it doesn't. But the general consensus online and when you see TikToks and you see reels about situations and stuff is one of the one of the parties ends up getting their heart broken, right?
Well, yeah, that's normal.
And that always, that's the stigma around situationships. When you mention to your friend, oh, I'm in a situationship, there's always the, oh, good luck, my man. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because it's kind of it's always seen as something's gonna happen. It's gonna find out that the other person is sleeping with someone or at the same time.
How about commitment? Is there commitment in a situationship? Because what you're trying to say is that really what the issue here is you have the liberty to not commit. Is that what you're saying?
That's the thing. That's the thing. Is
so.
Yeah.
So say you start seeing somebody in a situationship, and the weekend comes, and they say, or you say, I just feel like staying home tonight. I don't feel like going out. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, it's Monday morning and you have heard nothing. And your other half could be partying, could have stayed at home as well. And in a situationship, do you have the right to ask, what did you do this weekend and where were you? Or does that sound like, stop trying to control me?
I mean, I guess it depends on how you phrase it. If you ask how was your weekend, then it's all fine. But if you say, tell me what you did this weekend right now, then probably be the other thing.
Yeah, right. No, I want to try to say, I mean, what are your rights as a part, the wondering part? So if obviously you're not going to say, tell me where you were right now. Yeah. But if you say, how was your weekend? And they say, fine, full stop, nothing else. Do you have a right to ask, like, tell me more? Or
I mean, I don't know.
Hey, in my time, if that happened, right?
Yeah.
Say when it was already the 90s and you had phones and you could actually text, right? And because if it's in person by the other person's expression, you can tell. But normally, if that happened and they didn't reply, if I said, hey, how was your weekend? And they said, fine, and nothing else, that was a clear sign that they were ghosting you and it was time to.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, because if you send a text something and they just respond with it's fine, then you kind of get the feeling that they don't really want to talk to you. So you're kind of okay.
But in a situationship, you are allowed to do that without breaking the situationship, right? Is that?
I mean, I guess it depends on how things are and how far in the situationship you are with the other person. You know what I mean? Like if it's the very beginning, I would probably be like, oof, I guess he doesn't really want to talk to me anymore. You know what I mean? Because if I just get just fine, then I'll be like, well, I don't know where to take this conversation next. You know what I mean? So I'll just leave it until, yeah,
Right.
So
Yes. So that's pretty much the same as it was in our time.
yeah,
And so all that lack of commitment and liberty of commitment or liberty to not commit or whatever it is leads me to a very, very natural question, which is, are situationships monogamous?
yes and no. So
Okay.
I'd say at the beginning, no, but okay. It all depends on what you've talked with the other person, because you could say,
So you do talk, huh? So you do communicate. Huh?
yeah, of course.
Right.
I said this before. I said this before that you do communicate and you do talk to the other person and say what you're feeling, but there could be a point where you say, hey, I want this to kind of take the next half a step or quarter of a step, if you want to call it that, of where I just want us to be exclusive, and I just want things to be me and you. But frankly, if you're exclusive, then at that point you are basically like boyfriend and girlfriend, or you're in a relationship. So at that point, for me, it's kind of the same thing, but people do take it as two separate parts. So,
but officially, technically,
yeah,
by law, until you both mention exclusivity or that you want to be in a relationship, you are technically allowed to do whatever the hell you want, and the other person can't really question it, right?
exactly.
Okay,
But
that's
whatever. And what I was going to say, and this is where the whole heartbreak thing comes along, because normally one person feels a lot stronger about, the feelings aren't equal,
Yeah.
But someone's kind of like, oh, I like him or I like her, but I'm still gonna do my own thing on the side, and the other person's like, nah, I'm putting all my eggs in this one basket, and then they drop the basket and all their eggs are broken, So
Good analogy there. Right. So really the biggest difference between our situationship in the Gen Z scope and in the Gen Z meaning and a relationship or the beginnings of a relationship back in my time for the Gen X's is the fact that you are eligible to two-time the other person and to not be monogamous. And really that's it, because everything else is pretty much the same. Everything is except by name and by label. Everything is pretty much the same. You get together with somebody, you acknowledge, maybe without words in your case, but with words in ours, the fact that you enjoy each other's company. You give it a while to see if you're compatible or not enough to take it to the next step. And eventually one of them says, hey, should we make this official?
Yeah.
And that's it. Okay. Yeah. That's cool.
That's pretty good summary. Now, I have a question for you, right? So, the good thing about situationships in our generation is, if your friends come asking like, yo, what's up with this girl? You could say, oh, we're kind of in a situationship. Then the meaning gets put across quite easily, right? The other person will know what's happening, and then, then depending on how long you've been in a situationship or not, then your friend can be like, yo, did you gotta get it to the next step or wait a while or whatever? How would this period work in your time? Like, if you saw Fred, for example, when you were younger, right? And you saw he was with this girl, but he wasn't really for, I don't know, a few weeks, a month, or however long. Would there be a point where you're like, dude, what, like, are you guys boyfriend and girlfriend, or what?
No, we'll probably just say, hey, how's it going with so and so? Are you guys still together?
Yeah. Also, you would just straight up assume that you're boyfriend and girlfriend. Like, there wouldn't.
Well, yeah. If it's been a few months, then yeah, you start assuming that after a few months, the things are getting a little bit more serious. Maybe the answer might be, yeah, we're still together, but we're still keeping it casual. We only see each other weekends, and we're not really committing to anything yet. But the two people have spoken about it, and if they haven't, it's very, very clear by their actions. But normally, if they're keeping it casual, they've talked about it, and if they haven't talked about it, it's because they're still together and they're still trying to make sure that everything works out before committing more. But there was always communication, as far as at least in my experience. There's always that kind of communication. And the bottom line is that communication flowed from the beginning. It was good. You kept on going. If it didn't, then you knew that it was pretty much doomed, right? Like if from the very beginning, you said, hey man, that date we had was pretty hot, should we repeat it? And the answer was like, yeah, okay, let's try it. Then you're like, okay, that's not good. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe there was after that, maybe there was no reason to start talking anymore about the relationship because you knew that it was eventually going to run out. Some people are a little bit less intuitive for these kind of things and the conversation is had, but there's always communication. I think that's the key difference that there is, apart from the commitment monogamy type thing. The communication was very present, maybe not clear, but at least present from the beginning of the relationship.
Right.
We getting together.
I mean, I feel like the whole situationship thing also evolves the older you get, obviously, because I feel like the older you get, the more you realize that like communication is key. So I feel like situationships are less messy when you're older, even though they can still be messy and ultimately they could still end up in heartbreak. And they are more chaotic and more, I guess I would like to say they rampage. They're more rampageous. You can't say that, but I'm going to say it. Through those lives more easily wedging through the teenage years, I feel like that's,
Of course,
that's like all relationships, isn't it? Because people,
of course, yeah, the hormones. Your hormones are, first of all, you're lacking the experience. You need the experience.
Mhm.
So you have to find the experience, and that's why and the more experience you get, the better at it you get, obviously.
Yeah.
And also there's the hormones, right? You guys are just hormones bouncing up and down all over the place, and you're just exuding pheromones and all that. So, you got to let it all out, and the two things are normally a recipe for disaster, really, when it comes to relationships.
Yeah.
But I don't think. Ultimately, what you're telling me, what fascinates me is that such a concept is a really, really established thing among your generation, and yet I don't see it as the solution to the problem that you're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to agree with you. I find it quite funny because my generation likes to put a lot of labels on kind of everything. Everything has to have a meaning and everything has to have a label. So I find it quite amusing that there is a label for something when you don't want a label to be put on something. you know?
But that's how the conversation started.
And I find that quite ironic and quite amusing at the same time. And it's what leads to all this thing, all this confusion and all this bad times, I guess you could say.
So you do acknowledge that it's a confusing thing and it leads to bad times.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, like I've said many times, this podcast is more often than not one of the parties ends up heartbroken. So the lack of wanting commitment ends up causing, in the short term at least, it ends up causing more heartbreak than if you just were like open and honest about what was going on,
Yeah, you know why? Because exactly what you just said. The reason for that is because when there's no communication, things aren't clear. So, and do you think this is gonna last? This trend is gonna last?
I don't know if it's probably not gonna get better because, I mean, it's gotten worse since you were, or I want to say worse. It hasn't really changed, but it has at the same time. Since you were my age, so if you follow the trend, it probably won't change. And if it does change, it won't change for the better. I guess it'll just be different, won't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm your age and I have my son and I'm talking about the same thing with my son or my daughter or whatever, with my children, I'll probably be the same as you, confused about whatever turn they have and whatever thing they're going through. But ultimately, it's going to be exactly what I experienced, just in a different font and a different color. So,
human beings are human beings, and human nature is what it is.
Exactly. So ultimately, it won't change. Should it change? Maybe.
I think for the good of humanity, yes, I think it should change.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, like the people that are having the miscommunication are going to have miscommunications whether or not it's called a situationship, So, don't you think? I mean, if you're scared of commitment,
there's some people that are just not good at communicating. Some couples that just don't have it, and when there's that friction, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's better. My point is that it's better to cast that friction from the very beginning than at the end, right? So imagine that two people are no good at talking, or they don't communicate properly, unless they're having fun in a casual, non-committal way. If they carry that on for like maybe a year, And they think everything's going great. When the time comes to have that conversation, maybe it turns out that when it comes to that conversation, they're not very good at all. But by that time, it's already they're really committed, aren't they? So we could go around in circles, I guess.
Yeah, ultimately that's up to the people in themselves, isn't it? That's not up to the label of the situation itself, which is situationship. Because ultimately, the word situationship won't really matter that much. Because if you're that type of person that will go through that, you're gonna go through it, whether you're my age or in 2026 or you're my age in 1986.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think it's just always better to say it from the beginning and to be clear.
No, I agree with you. Communication is key.
Matt, I have one more question before we break off. I was going to say before we go. Yeah, have you ever been in a situation? Because I know you've spoken in the last episode, the first episode of the series. We spoke about breakups, so you spoke about you breaking up with your girlfriend. Was it a situationship before it became a relationship? Do you guys ever had that conversation, or?
Well, I feel like me and her would probably have two very different answers for this because no, the reason I say this is because
Well, you know who you are. If you're listening to this, write in the comments what your answer is.
No, the reason I say this is because when we started first going out, I was 15 and I was completely new to the dating scene. I didn't know what a situationship was. I was as green as you can be. Literally. I was, yeah. So I was kind of going with the flow. Most of the time the flow wasn't really the right flow.
Right. You sound like me, man. You sound like I was at that age.
Like father, like son, dude.
So we were like, hey, I think and she's like, situationship.
No, I mean, because I feel like I learned about the term situationship after I was already in properly in the relationship. I remember someone telling me, "So your boyfriend and girlfriend," and I was like, I think so. And they were like, "Well, did you ask her?" I was like, I have to ask her. So I suppose I was in a situationship at that moment. I was in another situationship afterwards, which I did break off to get back with my ex again.
Right. Okay.
Which that I was, because I wasn't as green anymore, and I was more of a, I don't want to say veteran because I'm still very young, but I was in the dating scene already, so I knew what was going on.
That one I remember. Yeah, I mean, I remember the first one too, but because I didn't know, I didn't know the concept of situationship then. I wasn't looking out for them. The second one I did, and I saw it, and no matter what you say, whatever this label is, you broke her heart.
Yeah, probably.
You should feel ashamed.
I do feel bad because that's not my intention, and that I never want to deal harm, but yeah, like I said, ultimately, and I do that person. I know who you are. You're probably not watching this, but I'm sorry.
You were acting within the parameters of the law. This is the law. You don't talk about it. You have a situationship, and you can anytime you want with no questions asked. Right? That's the whole thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, yes, but anyways, it is what it is. It's in the past. But yeah, to answer your question, the first time I was kind of lost. So I was in a situationship, even though I didn't know. So
right. So when was there a moment where maybe she told you, "Come on, silly, let's make it a relationship"? It's been a situationship all this time, or did you have to officially ask her? How was that? Because if you didn't know you were in a situationship, how did it turn into a relationship?
Well, like I said, someone didn't. I forget who it was because it was 5 years ago now, almost. There was a person that was like, "So, have you asked her to be your girlfriend?" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "What do you elaborate, please? I do not know what you mean by that." And they did elaborate, and I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, no, I haven't." Let me do that real quick. 1 second.
Did you?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was terrible. I remember. I was like, okay. I set up a date. She came over to our house, and I was like, I'm going to ask her at home. I ended up forgetting because we watched a movie and I forgot. I dropped her off at the train station. and I was walking back, and I was like, fuck, I forgot to ask. So I pulled out my phone and I sent her a text, and I was like, do you want to be my girlfriend? I meant to ask you during the date, but I forgot. And she was like, I forgot what she replied, but she basically said yeah. And later on, I remembered talking about like a year later, talking about this with her, and she was like, yeah, that was the worst way you could have done it. And I was like, yeah, I know, right?
Seriously, man.
I just wanted to get it over and done with, to be honest. I just wanted to sign the contracts, be able to take the photo like the footballers with the with the t-shirts, you know.
Were you scared that she might say no in a text and that was it? You wouldn't see her again?
I mean, I was pretty confident that she would say yes, but you know, there was obviously the little heartbeat moment of will she say yes or no? You know, you get the notification, your heart skips a beat, and then you say the yes, and you're like, oh, okay, thank God. I was more nervous for the first time I asked her out there. I was shooting bricks.
Right.
That's a story for another episode. For one of the episodes, this series will probably be about how do you start
How you start a relationship. That's well after a situationship, obviously.
yeah.
Okay. Well, it's been very interesting. I feel a little bit more enlightened. I kind of understand it, and I can understand what problem it's trying to solve, but I don't think it's actually solving the problem because I'm not really sure it is a problem.
Yeah.
I think humans are it's survival of the fittest. We have to find the correct genes to keep the gene pool going and to evolve, right? And the only way to do that is to find a partner that suits you, right? So things are never going to be perfect. So it's better to just find that from the very beginning is like, you know, hey, I think you're hot. Do you think I'm hot? Should we just start something or not? You know?
Yeah.
Or not, or say, hey, I think you're very smart and intelligent. Do you think I'm smart and intelligent? Should we start something right now or not? And just get it over and done with like the second day, you know, and then the doubt's over and then you can continue looking in the gene pool to see if there's something more compatible.
Yeah, that would be easier, but
Right.
that's not going to happen, and that won't happen. But I hope you understand or you grasp the idea of a situation better, even if you don't fully get them or understand them or the reason for them.
Yeah. That's exactly what I do. I I get the meaning now. I see what it's trying to do. I'm not quite sure I understand it fully though. I have to admit, I'm sorry. I feel really old right now, but
that's fine. That's fine, my dude. I mean,
right.
You can't always see eye to eye with everything, can you?
No,
That's fine.
So that's a good episode. I think it's a good point to stop it there. What are we talking about in the next episode? In the next episode of the series?
Well, to next episode, we're going to fast forward in the relationship and forget all the relationship and the beginning and when to ask, and we're going to go straight to the end and talk about if you can be friends with your exes and that whole debacle, I suppose.
That's a good one.
So thank you very much for this conversation about situationships, dude. I'm glad you grasped the understanding and the meaning of it better. And yeah, do you want to say anything before we sign off properly?
Nothing. Let's go talk about friendships after a relationship.
Sounds great. Well, thank you guys very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed. If you agree or disagree with anything we said about situationships, let us know down below. Maybe talk about and say your own experiences with situationships. We'll definitely be reading them if you do. Leave a like and subscribe, and see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.